Mittal, Managing Director and CEO of Biocon, joins us now to discuss more on this. Mr. Mittal, good morning and thanks a lot for joining us. This is Pavitra. So to begin with, if you could just tell us why you've sold the stake in Syngene, and also what we want to know is that are you looking to sell any more, or is this it for now?
So thanks, Pavitra, and good morning, and thanks for having me here. I think yesterday, as you said, that we sold 2.18 crore shares in a block trade at 560 rupees and raising, give and take, $150 million. Now, as you are aware, that Biocon Biologics is acquiring the biosimilars business of Viatris for a total consideration of $3.2 billion. And of this $3.2 billion, $2 billion will be paid in cash upon closing. And to fund this, there was a commitment done to Viatris that in the current shareholders and investors would pump in minimum of $500 million. So Biocon Limited, which is a parent of Biocon Biologics, has to pump in minimum $235 million contractually. And to part fund this investment, we have raised $150 million by divesting roughly 5.5% in Syngene.
Okay.
And now with this sale of Syngene, we do not expect to divest any more shares in Syngene. And we also have committed to a 90 days lock-in to the investors who have invested in this block trade.
Okay. All right. Mr. Mittal, hi. This is Ekta joining into this conversation. Just before we get to the interest that you've seen in this particular block that took place, you had a commitment, like you said, of around $235 to $250 million in terms of an equity investment for Viatris, the PE component, which Biocon will be committing to. You've raised around $150 million. You have maybe $100 million to go on the upper end. Tell us where that money is coming from, the additional $100 million.
See, there are multiple ways we are going to raise this money. And in fact, we might increase our stake on beyond 235 million minimum investment. So there are structured investments, there is a debt option, and there is already cash available on Biocon's balance sheet of over $100 million. So right now, while we are working out on the bigger fundraise at Biocon Biologics level in terms of debt and equity, at the minimum investment that Biocon has to do with this $150 million, we are very comfortable.
Okay, so just to put this, into perspective and to just provide some clarification on that, you will not look to currently sell more stake in Syngene to fund that additional $100 million, which is required in terms of the equity component. You're going to look at other forms and manners to fund that $100 million. Can you clarify what that could be? Could that be other sort of stake sales, any kind of non-core asset divestment? Okay, I think we've lost Mr. Mittal. We're going to get him back on. But this is going to be important in terms of, how exactly they're going to be funding the Viatris deal, which is expected to close in the next couple of months. Biocon has an equity component of around $800 million. $550 million was expected to be from the current PE investors as well as Serum, and $250 million from the likes of Biocon. So they've raised around $150 million from this stake sale, which they undertook yesterday in Syngene. So where is the additional equity component coming from is something that the street would definitely want to know. We're going to get him back on in just a couple of minutes, but back to you guys till then.
Okay, so here's what we'll do. We'll get into a very short break. When we return, we'll have, Siddharth connected. But in the meanwhile, we'll also, invite Mitesh Thakkar on the show. So when we return from the short break, we'll have a few technical trading ideas as well. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. We still have with us Siddharth Mittal, the MD and CEO of Biocon, to talk about the stake sale which they undertook in Syngene yesterday, raising over 1,200 crores. Mr. Mittal, if you could just clarify then this additional $100 million, you said you're not probably looking to sell stake in Syngene anytime soon, but is that totally off the cards, one? And two, any other kind of divestment on the cards for you to raise that $100 million equity component, at least the minimum?
Yes, so for now, additional stake sale is completely off cards. And as I mentioned, we've also given a 90-day lock-in for the promoter not to divest any more shares in Syngene. And we already have $100 million plus in our cash reserve at Biocon Limited level. So as soon as the transaction is ready to close, we have the funds available to the tune of 250 million. However, we also have debt lines. There's hardly any debt in Biocon Limited balance sheet, so we can raise funds overnight. And plus, we are also talking to a few other investors who are interested to take a stake in Biocon Biologics, but invest in Biocon through a structured deal. So there are multiple fundraise discussions going on, and we are very confident that we'll be able to fund this $250 million plus additional amount that we are looking to invest in Biocon Biologics upon closing.
Okay, so you were supposed to raise at least around $550 million from your existing PE investors, including Serum. That, along with $250 million from you, would be the $800 million total equity component for Viatris. Where does that $550 million stand in terms of funding from the existing PE or new PE investors, as well as Serum?
So we already have term sheets with investors, including Serum, and certain new investors who are looking to invest in this business. They are in final stages of diligence. And I think the main thing at this stage is receiving all the regulatory approvals to close the deal. And as soon as the approvals come in, we should be in a position to invest that $800 million. In fact, the demand is very strong from equity investors' perspective, and we are trying to see if we can increase the equity investment and reduce the debt component from 1.2 billion down to a more reasonable level.
So Serum was in particular looking to raise stake in Biocon Biologics. They have, I think, around 15% stake at this point in time. How much are they probably going to hold eventually?
See, with up to $300 million additional investment, which we have said in the past that Serum wants to invest up to $300 million. And post-dilution resulting from Viatris acquisition, Serum would be holding anywhere between 12 to 13% of the company.
So Serum is looking to invest an additional $300 million in Biocon Biologics, which would be a part of the equity component funding?
That's correct.
Okay. And when are we going to see this entire closure take place?
See, we had informed the market that we expect the closing by end of this quarter. Of course, this is all subject to receiving necessary approvals. We have got certain approvals, and we are awaiting certain other approvals. So it should be anytime. If we miss this month, then hopefully it will be in the first half of next quarter.
Okay, this over $1 billion that you're looking to, I think it was a $1.8 billion debt commitment that you had received at one point in time. You're looking to reduce that debt commitment as well. Give us a structure eventually of how exactly the Viatris deal would be funded. How much is the debt commitment right now? How much have you already raised via debt? What is the structure of debt? And how much interest are you paying, considering that we're in a higher interest rate environment as well?
So, Ekta, these things are still being worked out. Initially, we had said that 800 million will be funded through equity and 1.2 through debt. But post our discussions with the private equity investors, we have seen a very strong demand to invest in equity. And we are considering options which will also give investors a comfort that the debts are not very high at very high levels. And we are very open. So right now we are at that stage where we are discussing with our banks on the debt front, and we are discussing with private equity investors on the equity front, and the final decision in terms of the split between debt and equity would be taken in a few days. And the debt rates, of course, when we announced the deal way back in Feb, the debt rates, interest rates were quite reasonable. Since then, we have seen a couple of rate hikes from the Feds. So we would see an impact of that. But that said, the cost of debt is still within a very reasonable means, within 2 to 3% per annum.